In Tactics Ogre Reborn, there's a seemingly endless array of new units, characters, and classes that you can acquire. When Chapter 4 rolls around, that becomes all the more apparent. So today, we're discussing the pirate Azelstan and his semi-unique class, Buccaneer. Let's begin. Hello everyone, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. If you find my content fun, entertaining, or educational, please subscribe. Thank you. To start on the road to acquiring the dashing Azelstan, you must be in early Chapter 4 of any route. If you have already completed the battle at Mount Hedon, you've gone too far and will have to wait to use the world system to return to an earlier point, or load a save if you have one. You will start by, as is so often the case, checking the warrant report for a talk entry titled Port Omish, Den of Thieves. Upon reading this entry, the titular Port Omish will appear on your map. Prepare for a fight, then step onto the town. A quite fun cutscene will play, and then you will find yourself in the fight. Bring some units with long move range, low RT, and healing magic/items, because unfortunately, this is an escort mission. When you enter the fight, you will see our dashing target on the far side of the map, surrounded on all sides by ornery pirates. If you want to recruit him, he'll have to survive, so push hard and fast with some support units. If you're lucky, Azelstan will run towards you. If you're not, you have your work or a reset cut out for you. Note the Knight and the Terror Knight at the front of the pack. They will absolutely stonewall you with Rampart Aura if you let them, so flying units and the siege skill are a must here. Beyond keeping Azelstan alive, this is a fairly bog-standard battle, so keep at it, and you'll get the job done. Once the mission is complete, a cutscene will play, and we can move on to the next step. Next, you will proceed through Chapter 4 until you complete the battle at Hagia Banhamuba and speak with Arceus Maruva at Fidok Castle. Say that sentence 5 times fast, by the way. Once this scene is complete, there's a bit of a chain of other scenes to watch. As always, I won't spoil them here beyond providing you the steps you need to find them. Note that all of this must be done before you attack Barnisha Castle, which is where I screwed up in my initial playthrough, by the way, don't be like me. First, read the talk report, The Pirate's Graveyard, and the dungeon will appear on the map. Go to it, enter the first battle, then retreat and return to the map. Another talk entry titled The Dread Pirate will now be available. Read it as well, then step back on to Port Omish. Another scene with Azelstan will occur. Finally, go to Kadriga Fortress to trigger a scene that will start the next leg of the quest. This one scene is what I missed the first time, by the way. All that progress undone by an insanely missable, 20-second cutscene. Anyway, on to the next step. You will again need to make progress through Chapter 4 to get to this next series of steps. Push through the story until you complete the events at Barnisha Castle. However that goes down, you'll then want to return to Port Omish for another battle alongside Azelstan. Make sure you do this before going to Heim, or again, you'll be locked out. This battle should be far easier than the first, however, as you actually spawn in directly behind Azelstan and should be able to cover him much more easily. With that major hurdle covered, there's not a whole lot to say about this battle. Watch out for the archers and the Hydra, keep Azelstan healed up and covered, and you'll be fine. Again, let the following scene play out, and we shall proceed. Finally, we have arrived. When you're ready for a bit of a dungeon crawl, head to the Pirate's Graveyard. While I would like to do a more in-depth guide for the graveyard at some point, the long and short of it is this: undead, birdmen, lizardmen, and octopi. If you can deal with these types of enemies, you'll be totally fine to push through the dungeon. Mages, archers, and fusiliers will serve you well here due to some of the odd terrain, but beyond that, standard combat rules apply. Once you arrive at the Crystal Halls stage, Azelstan will join as a guest. You must keep him alive once more, but that shouldn't be a problem as he's actually in your lines this time, and the enemies are fairly tame. Once the battle is complete, you have a choice to make. Azelstan will join, but you can still push forward to find the hidden treasure of the graveyard and see some very nice cutscenes. If you're not interested in that, you can skip ahead to my discussion of Azelstan and his Buccaneer class, but if you do want to know where to go, here you go. Stick to the right-hand side of the graveyard until you clear the map, the Bosom of the Sea God. Continue on to Midline Rift, then hook a left to Unholy Ground. This is your final battle, and you need to make sure that you bring Azelstan if you want to complete the final leg of this quest. As far as the battle is concerned, again, it's not terrible. The only notable enemy is the enemy Buccaneer that you have to fight, but even then, he just has an axe. He's not too threatening. If you made it here, you can handle this fight. Once it's done, some very good scenes will play out with Azelstan, culminating in one final choice. Choose to leave the treasure behind for some more excellent scenes, as well as a big reputation boost with all factions, or choose to take it for some treasure, including Pirate's Marks. The choice, as always, is yours. But those are some really good scenes, and like, you can farm up Pirate's Marks in the Pirate's Graveyard once the quest is done, so I mean, Either way, once it's all done, you're free to bounce, and enjoy the reward of Azelstan and his Buccaneer class. As far as how this retired pirate performs, there's definitely some interesting points to consider. As a class, Buccaneer has a very strong spread of growths, with good strength, vitality, dex, agility, avoidance, and resistance. Also, as with all unique characters, Azelstan himself has better RT than your standard generic, although it's not as big of a difference here as it is with someone like, say, Ravness or Folkert. Still, Azelstan is a decently fast unit on par with Kashua, Cressida, Deneb, and Zapan, and can handle heavier gear well as a result. Notably, however, Azelstan is actually much faster than his RT would imply, thanks to a particular skill Buccaneer has access to. Let's go over those skills first. Buccaneer has a very interesting medley of skills from various other classes. They can use fists, knives, one- and two-handed swords, axes, whips, crossbows, and, notably, fusils. They can pincer attack, and they have steadfast, quite relevant in the Palace of the Dead, as well as your standard constitution, charm resist, petrify resist, etc., etc. But here's the really interesting stuff. They have double attack, evade and apostate, risk management, and speed star. That's right. Buccaneer is one of the only classes available to the player that can use the insanely strong self-haste that is the typical territory of rogues, which, as I implied before, makes Azelstan quite the contender. Thanks to double attack and risk management, you can thus use him or any other Buccaneer as a vicious frontliner, carving through enemies and deflecting damage to their allies. Conversely, if you really want to lean into the Dread Pirate idea, you can load them up with evade, apostate, a big two-hander weapon, and pincer attack to menace everyone and everything around them. You can even go for a similar vibe to my Duelist Lindel build, although without any of the Fusilier's Fusil-specific skills and the Lobber skill, it's sadly kind of a weak strategy, and unfortunately I don't really recommend you use Fusils on your Buccaneer. In terms of what armor Buccaneer can wear, they have the fairly standard medium-weight fighter options. Caster gear is a no-go, as are some pieces of the heaviest tanking sets, and some more specialized stuff like the alluring sets. Generally, until you start getting relic gear for him, Azelstan will probably be wearing your best damage-boosting armor. Notably, Buccaneer can also use shields, although I hesitate to recommend it, as they're really inclined towards more reckless all-out attacking than any sort of defense. That's what your defensive skills are for, after all. It's also worth noting that Buccaneer isn't locked to Azelstan exclusively, although your reclass options are rather limited. Denim and Canopus can both change to the class, and it's quite the solid choice for both of them. While Denim will ultimately want to land in Lord, Buccaneer will serve him well until then, and Canopus can make great use of the class's skills in conjunction with his ability to fly. There's also one other character that can change to Buccaneer, but if you've been following along and only played/seen the Chaos route thus far, I won't spoil it. For now, let's discuss an example build, shall we? While there are a great many ways that you can build Azelstan, my current setup I'm playing with is a lightning-based dual swords build I've dubbed Storm of the Sea God. The goal is to see Azelstan roll over the enemy like a ship being swallowed by a raging storm, inflicting massive damage in the process. First up, the weapons. I'm currently running the Lombardia as our first weapon. As a one-handed sword with counterattack, it's a natural choice for a build where you want to be on the enemy at all times. It's due to this sword's lightning element that I changed Azelstan to the lightning element to eke out some extra damage. Next up is a Walloon sword. This crafted blade certainly isn't the most exciting pick, and it will be a candidate for a replacement, but it has a few advantages. First, like most one-hander swords, it does have parry. In combination with the Lombardia, this allows Azelstan to both avoid extra hits and counterattack, which is quite strong. The Walloon is also lighter than similar swords, meaning it will have less of an impact on our RT, and it gives Azelstan a piercing damage attack to accompany the Lombardia's slashing damage, so we can diversify our damage types. For armor, I'm currently using the following: a bronze helmet +1, worm scale armor +1, leather sleeves +1, and linen slops +1, as well as a guardsman's earring. If you're familiar with my other build guides, this is a fairly standard array of gear that keeps damage up and weight relatively low. Again, there's relic gear and crafted gear that can be acquired to really bling out our favorite pirate lord, but this setup will get the job done for now. I will highly advocate for that guardsman's earring though. The extra damage for our double attack is no slouch, and the extra damage resistance across the board that it provides will be vital, considering how gung-ho we are with this strategy. For items, again, I use a standard array of options. A healing seed +1 should provide all the aid you need in most scenarios. The Arayan Plume is a must for any heavy damage build such as this. A Blessing Stone is an obvious pick on anyone, and finally, the Crystallized Flame is nice to blunt any magic damage that could come your way. Remember, you can deflect physical attacks, you can't deflect magic, so it's more likely you'll be taking damage from magic than physical attacks here. For skills, you want the following: the one-handed sword skill, of course, as well as risk management to make it even harder to damage Azelstan. You'll want double attack for the extra damage that it'll provide, and speed star to ensure you're taking as many turns as possible. Depending on the enemy party, you could also consider swapping risk management for evade or apostate. That's a call for you to make, depending on what type of damage you're likely to see in the current fight. I think you'll find that this build will tear apart single targets while being remarkably difficult to bring down, and I can't wait to get some truly busted gear to make it even more ridiculous. There are, of course, plenty of other ways to build a Buccaneer as well, and I'm very likely to try some different ones on Denim and Canopus, if just for the variety, if nothing else. Do you have a particular build for Buccaneer that you would recommend? I'd love it if you shared it in the comments, so myself and others can peruse it and try out some fun new tricks for ourselves. As far as Azelstan and the Pirate's Graveyard quest are concerned, I have to say it's probably my second favorite side quest in the game, right behind Cressida and the Balmamusa Dead. There's just such an interesting angle to explore here, seeing the effect that the various wars of the Valerian Isles have had on the general populace, and then filtering that through the eyes of a world-weary old sailor. It's very good. It's different from pretty much everything else that you see in the game. Some of the most touching moments in the game, really, in my opinion, come in this quest, and it was a pleasure to finally experience the whole thing after having put it off on the PSP release for all these years. As always, thank you all for watching. There's still so much to do in Tactics Ogre Reborn, so between this and Fire Emblem Engage, we're going to be busy for quite a while around here. Again, my name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, and remember, be good to each other. Bye now.